There are few thoughts more terrifying than being pursued by something more powerful, more intelligent than yourself. Imagine, if you will, trying to hide from a race of beings whose technology far surpasses humanity's wildest dreams. You see, there would be no escape. You will be caught if they so desire it. And when they're done, they can and will be back if they please. That is why alien abduction stories are so scary, at least to me. So here are some allegedly true ones. Enjoy, and be sure to send me your scariest experiences at darkstories.org. And follow the Darkness Prevails podcast on Spotify and iTunes as well. Now, let's begin. Alien Abduction, from Anonymous. I've always believed in the prospect of alien life, but as for visiting aliens, I guess I never gave it much thought. However, the idea of alien abduction seemed downright ridiculous to me. Trying to stay fit when weather permits, I like to walk to my office. It's about 3/4 of a mile away, and the walk allows me to get some exercise and a sweet view of the North Pacific landscape. It's usually a nice, relaxing walk and typically uneventful. This particular day starts off like the rest. I left home early in hopes to get some quiet time alone at the office. It was about 6 a.m. when I left. I walked up the hill in front of my office, and about halfway up I see 3 kids up ahead in the distance. I can see they have some sort of flying plaything above them. This was my impression from that distance. They were out of sight while I approached, but soon were in view and maybe 100 feet away. I remember thinking this was odd, but then I just seemed to fall asleep. I don't know how long I was out, but I woke up and I was on a cold metallic bed. I remember thinking I must have passed out on my walk, and they took me to the hospital. I got the impression of a medical setting due to the smell and the super clean environment that I found myself in. I was having a hard time focusing my eyes and ears on the people around me. I took a minute, but I finally was able to see that I was looking at this person's back. He turned around, and I went into total shock. This person looked like a man, but was certainly not human. The eyes gave it away. Large almond-shaped eyes with very vibrant purple color. The head was larger, but not like people tend to picture an alien looking like. They looked very human, but obviously not. I was in a panic at this point. I jumped up and grabbed some sort of tool to defend myself. They backed off and looked quite afraid. Their pupils were getting bigger and smaller at a rapid pace. It seemed to be associated with its cardiovascular system. This must happen when they're excited. One of them stepped forward and spread his arms out as to protect his crew. I quickly ran off down the hallway closest to me. I found myself in a narrow hall with doors on the left. I took the first door, and as soon as I entered, bam, I found myself right back where I started. This time I went to the second door and bam, same thing. I fell to my feet trying to catch my breath, and I'm sobbing, just freaking out. I remember I touched my hands to the floor, and when I lifted my hands I could see that the floor was transparent for a few seconds, then went back to metal. At this point I realized that I was in the air. I started to hyperventilate. It took me a minute, but I gathered myself and realized that I'm going to need to confront these beings in order to get home. I got up and I headed back to them. As I approach, one of them stands forward, presenting to me a glass-like rectangular thing. Picture a tablet device made of crystal with liquid colors inside. He puts a hand on it and presents it to me, as if I should do the same. So I did. Instantly, we were connected and communicating. Not like words, but thoughts, transferred from him to me. I knew what he wanted me to know, and vice versa. Though our communication did not last long, the information was vast, as if we had had an extensive conversation, like we'd spoken together, instead of using this amazing device. Afterward, I was ushered into a room where there was a young girl, maybe in her early 20s. She was sobbing on the floor, holding her knees. "This must be a dream," she said, among other ramblings. I noticed that the wall on one side was made of glass and had separated cages built into it. Most of the cages were empty. The first cage, however, had an odd animal, small and furry like a dog, but winged, although it didn't seem that these wings would be adequate for flying. This animal had an elephant-like snout or trunk. When it stared at you, it would make you nauseous. Another cage had a regular earthly Labrador, and one cage had a typical gray alien in it. He was either dead or asleep. It looked like it had been thrown about in the cage and never moved again. At some point, I'm fighting off an urge to go to sleep. It became too strong, and I passed out. I woke up outside, and the same ball of light I saw the kids on the path with was floating above me. It shot straight up in the air and was gone. Call me crazy, but I think that the ball of light, the size of a basketball, was their ship. Inside it, it was as big as a shopping mall. During our communication period, he explained that they come from a planet close to death. The remaining population that does live on the home planet are mostly those trying to save the planet. All the animals in the wild died off, and most were water poisoned. These beings, they go out to investigate planets with intelligent life and see how they address planetary issues, what technologies they have that would help their efforts. They are interested in our animals and our oceans. Once they discovered humans, they began to theorize that they evolved from beings that were once in a human-like state. They believe Earth is destined to end up like their planet if big changes aren't made soon. Now, I never would have gotten past the second paragraph of this story if I was asked to read it, but I promise you this experience is true. I am a medical doctor in a small town, and going to the public may adversely affect my practice. Also, I don't want to be the face of this phenomenon. However, as a scientist, I ask that you leave yourself open enough to see the facts and consider the real truth about this phenomenon. My Week with the Aliens, from RoboGirl99. It started on a Friday night. I had worked a double shift at the store because we were short-handed. I'm a cashier at our neighborhood Kroger store. 2 people had called in sick and I needed the extra money. I got home late because I had to help close. When I arrived at my apartment, it was dark. Usually the lights are all on because my roommate would forget to turn anything off. As I fumbled for the keys in my purse, I remembered my roommate telling me she had tickets for a concert and would not be home until after midnight. Normally, Athena, my 2-year-old lab, would run to meet me, but she was nowhere to be seen. So after I shut the door behind me, I flipped on a few lights and began to look for her. I yelled for her a few times, but she never came. After a good sweep around the house, I finally found her hiding underneath my bed. But she refused to come out, so I decided she would come out when she was ready. While getting ready to shower before bed, I pondered what could be wrong with her. I hoped she wasn't sick. I had just about finished up my shower when I thought I heard Athena growling. That, with the fact that I was basically alone in the house, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I love scary movies, and I probably watch too many of them. The worst place to get spooked is in the shower, when you're completely vulnerable. I had to be tough. After all, I'm a grown woman, have been for a few years. So I dried off and threw on my PJs. When I stepped back into the bedroom, all I could see was Athena's tail sticking out from under the bed. I got down to where I could peek under the bed and talk to her. But she was deathly still, and that worried me. I pulled her gently out from under the bed. She seemed to be sleeping, but she didn't wake up when I moved her. I didn't have much time after that to think about it. The next thing I remember is the room got blindingly bright, and I heard a thump and then nothing. Everything went black. I had what felt like the strangest dream. I saw dark shadows standing in front of a bright light, and I felt several pairs of cold hands on me. It felt like they were pinning me to the floor. I couldn't move, but I couldn't feel any emotion either. I felt a warm liquid being poured over me, starting at the top of my head, and as it was reaching my feet, I drifted off into a peaceful nothingness. What felt like moments later, I was awakened to the dog licking my face. It was daylight outside, and the sun was shining in through my bedroom window. I thought I had just had the weirdest dream. The first thing I did was get online and start researching the meaning of my dream. I didn't find much, and as the day progressed, I slowly forgot about the dream. I only worked a few hours that afternoon, so I got home early. Athena was lying in the front room when I got home. She seemed to be exhausted. My roommate had left me a note on the table about some amazing guy she had met the night before, and said she may be late again. I wasn't used to having the house to myself, so I was a little excited. I could eat junk food and watch whatever I wanted all evening on the TV. I was off on Sunday, so I could stay up late and sleep in. As evening rolled around and it started to get dark, Athena got up long enough to eat, and then lay down beside me on the couch as I was getting ready to start my first movie. About an hour in, Athena started to get weird. She jumped off the couch and began to whine. She would pace from the couch to the front door and back. I thought she needed to go to the bathroom, but normally she would just use the doggy door in the back of the house. I got up and walked her to the back door as she begrudgingly followed me. As I opened the door, I was hit in the face by a light so bright that it momentarily blinded me. Athena yelped and took off back through the house looking for a place to hide. As I looked back to see where the light was coming from, I had the strange feeling that the floor had disappeared from beneath my feet. It was a terrifying feeling, and I was just waiting for my body to crash into the floor. For the second time, everything just faded away, and I seemed to fall into a peaceful sleep. Again, the next morning, I woke up, curled up under the blankets on my bed. I did not remember nearly as much as I had the day before. I was starting to get worried that there was something wrong with me. I don't drink, and I've never had any health problems. I couldn't find any bumps or bruises, so what the heck was going on? Was I going crazy? Later that day, I told my roommate what had happened, and she listened patiently, but I could tell she did not believe me. She suggested that if it kept happening, I should see a doctor. The next 3 nights I made it to bed peacefully without any strange happenings, but each night I had similar dreams to the first night. Each dream had a little more detail than the last. I was lying on a cold metallic surface in a room that looked like it was completely made of metal. The room was large but fairly empty. There was a huge bright light directly overhead. As I was lifted onto the bed, I eventually started to make out shapes with faces. They had large heads and dark eyes, but I never saw past that. By the fifth encounter, I was starting to feel sleep deprived. I decided on Wednesday evening that I would stay up all night. I thought if I deprived myself of enough sleep, I would quit dreaming and be able to sleep through the next night. I seriously failed at that. I passed out on the couch around midnight. I didn't have any dreams or anything strange happen that I recall until I woke up. I woke up in my bed with no idea how I got there. Later that day, I noticed that I had a rash on both of my wrists, and shortly after, I noticed the same thing on my ankles. It didn't itch, it was just a splotch of bright red spots that went all the way around. At this point, you can guess where my imagination was going. Thursday evening rolled around, and I still had not called a doctor or talked to anyone else. I just figured that whatever was going on would run its course and I would be fine. It wasn't really late when I decided that I would go to bed early, since I had to work the next day. I brushed my teeth, put on my pajamas, and convinced Athena to sleep with me, hoping that her presence would help me feel safe. I had trouble falling asleep, and around 10 p.m. it started to rain outside. The rain was soothing, and I finally dozed off, just to be scared right out of my sleep by a crash outside my bedroom window. I was scared, but I still managed to get out of bed to take a look out the window. A large tree branch had fallen out of a tree close to my room. I didn't recall any lightning, but I must have missed it while I was sleeping. I went back to bed, relieved that the only thing scary outside was nature, but it wasn't what was outside that I should have been scared of. This was the worst night of all. I drifted off into what started out as a peaceful sleep. Slowly, I started to become aware of my surroundings. There I was in the same room, and the creatures were standing all around me. They were trying to fasten me down to a hard surface. They were communicating with each other in a weird, chirping sound. I fought hard and eventually broke loose and fell onto the floor. I somehow made it to my feet and ran through the only doorway in that room. As I was running, everything started to get very bright. Then the light faded, and I was standing in the front yard. Next to me stood Athena. I called my mom, and she called a doctor. They examined me and ran tests. I even talked to a shrink, but they gave me a clean bill of health. I didn't stay with my roommate one more day after that. I moved back home with my mom. I haven't had any more experiences, and it's been 3 years. I may never know what really was happening to me, but I know what I believe. Possible alien abduction from Trey M. This is a pretty short story, but it doesn't make it any less scary. My name is Trey, and this is what happened to my best friend a few years ago. It was the 4th of July, and my friend Hunter and I spent the evening with a bunch of our friends, shooting off fireworks and ending the evening with an epic bottle rocket fight, which I'd say I won. It was pretty late when we ran out of fireworks, and we all decided it was time to go home. We called Hunter's mom, and she told us to meet her at the high school, and she would pick us up. It was only about a 10-minute walk from the field where we were shooting fireworks. We had been walking for a few minutes when we saw a strange glowing shape over the tree line. We thought it might be a spotlight from the barges on the river, but it wasn't moving. It was just hovering there. Out of curiosity, we walked towards it. As we got closer, it lit up like someone had flipped a switch. The lights hit us right in the face. That was enough for us. We took off like our butts were on fire. We made it to the high school, and we were out of breath, but immediately we spotted Hunter's mom. I had not even realized at that point that Hunter wasn't behind me anymore. I told his mom what had happened, and that he had just been right there with me. I tried his cell phone but didn't get an answer. I got in her car and we drove around looking for him. We spent about half an hour looking for him and calling his phone with no luck. But then his mom remembered she had put a tracking app on her phone service that would show where his phone was. When she opened it up and used it to locate Hunter's phone, it showed that he was at home somehow. Relieved but confused, we headed to his house to see if he was there, or if he had simply left his phone at home. When we made it there, we found Hunter sleeping peacefully in his bed. His mom was angry, so she woke him up to chew him out. The crazy thing is, Hunter did not remember anything that had happened past shooting fireworks. Nearly Abducted, from Julie. This happened the summer of 2014, I believe. We lived in Farmington, New Mexico. My dad, mom, my best friend, and son all in one house. My mom got a call from my grandma to help her out in Cove, Arizona, for a ceremony. It would be on Friday. Mom agreed and left that same day. I expected her to come home on Sunday. She leaves and that's that. The day goes on for us at home. Nighttime comes and we're all sleeping. I was in my bed when I woke up by my room light turning on. I got up and I saw my mom just staring at me and crying. She's crying like someone had died. At one point, I thought they saw someone die or they killed someone, honestly. Her face was just unsettling. I jumped up, stood on my bed, and jumped over my sleeping best friend, landing right in front of her. As I'm trying to calm her down, I saw one of her friends. He was in the living room walking back and forth, making sure the door was locked, looking outside. I glanced at the time. It was 3:30 a.m. The friend looks at my mom and says, "Holy crap, they're freaking real. Oh my God, they're freaking real." Both are annoying at this point because no one has told me what happened and why she isn't with my grandma. Finally, my mom calms down after I put Scott Pilgrim on in the living room. As I talk to her, she goes on to explain. When she left that afternoon, she had called to see if her friend wanted to come along. He's down for it and jumps in. From there, my mom thinks, cool, I'll ask some other friends to see if they want to come too. 2 more of her friends say yes. Both are hanging out with each other, but they gotta watch one of their brother's trailers until he got off work, which wouldn't be until around 11 that night. So my mom thinks, yeah, that's fine. We can leave early in the morning, so we'll just hang out with you guys tonight. So my mom and her friend head on over. This is in the same town, Farmington, but there's a section of trailers called Wildflower. Pretty big place and lots of houses. A few months before this, my mom had gotten an SUV, so it was a big vehicle. Before she left our house that day, she took the very back seats out, laying out blankets. That's where she was going to sleep while helping with my grandma. Some ceremonies aren't at a house, so you would have to stay where it's at. Back to that night. It's evening when they get to the other friend's house. My mom parks her vehicle so close to the trailer, you could roll down the window on the driver's side, stick your hand out, and touch the outside of it. Once inside, they just talk and hang out. It's late in the night, and my mom says, "All right, I'm off to bed. Gonna go sleep in the SUV. I want to see how it is since that's where I'll be sleeping all weekend." She rolled the windows down halfway and opened the sunroof. It was summer after all. There she was, sleeping, but gets awakened by a knock at the door. She gets up trying to see who it is, and it's her friend with a tiny flashlight, saying, "Hey, can I stay in there with you? There's nowhere to sleep inside." My mom, annoyed, says, "You scared me. Yeah, come on in." So he lies down in the back seat while my mom is still in the very back. He starts talking about life. But my mom is not in the mood for conversation, just tiredly answering, yeah. Then my mom altogether falls asleep on him, so he's lying there reading a book with his tiny flashlight. He too falls asleep but gets awakened by a bad dream. He gets chills and freezes up. He turns on his flashlight waiting to hear something, but it's absolute silence. However, he still has this terrible feeling and wakes up my mom again. At this point, she's fed up. "All right, dude, I'm up. What's going on now?" He replies, "I think someone's outside. Or something. It's probably one of the guys coming out of the trailer." No. It feels off. They both sit in silence. The front porch light that was on when they fell asleep was now off. It was pitch black out there. My mom was trying to open the big back door where she was lying, but couldn't find any handle. Then she crawls over the back seat and into the driver's seat. She honks the horn trying to get someone to turn on the porch light so they could both go inside. However, no one opens up or comes out. My mom says, "I think I'm just going to make a run for the door." No, please don't. I'm not kidding. Something doesn't feel right." "Well, do you see anything?" He looks outside a bit. "No, just stay in here and lock the doors." She does so and turns the whole vehicle on, while still honking and probably waking up the whole neighborhood. Yet no one inside comes to check what's going on. My mom's friend is still in the back seat. He sticks his head out the window, flashing his light. My mom continues to honk when she heard him start screaming his head off. He flies back all the way to my mom's lap, shaking and screaming for my mom to drive while staring towards the back of the vehicle. Drive! What the heck is that?" As they're driving, they hear this loud noise, almost like a weird, typical ghost. When they heard the noise, they were already down the road speeding, going 50 miles per hour. If someone was messing with them, how'd they keep up with them? They both are freaking out, screaming at each other. My mom said, "What was that noise? What did you see?" The friend was still shaking and looking at the window, not answering. Around that area is an adult detention center, the only place nearby, so they drive to it. They soon see 2 security guards taking a smoke break. They were probably shocked by seeing this SUV speeding towards them. My mom was too scared to get out and was crying, and so was her friend at this point. They both ran screaming and yelling at the guards. "There's someone out there! Is there anyone you could call? I think it was chasing us. I don't know what it is. It looked like a freaking alien." Right after hearing that, one of the guards immediately walked off back into the building, not saying a word. The other guard goes on to say, "Don't mind him. You guys aren't the first people to come here to see that thing. We don't know what it is either, and there's nothing we can do but tell others to start carrying a weapon." Well, that was a dead end, but they could understand what was going on at least. My mom and her friend just headed home. On the way, my mom's friend describes what he saw. "When I poked my head out the window, my light flashed right on it. It had big, black eyes and gray skin. It wasn't tall, though. It had its hand on the window. It looked like it was trying to be quiet and sneak around." He did draw what he saw, but this was years ago, so I don't have the drawing. But he was good at drawing, and when I saw it, it was quite clear that it appeared to be an alien. When they got to our house and I saw them like that, we stayed up all night, and in the morning she called her friends, telling them, "Dude, if you guys are messing with us, I'm going to beat both your butts." They replied, "What do you mean? What happened? Where are you guys? I thought you were staying here." She answers, "Didn't you guys hear us honking right outside?" "No, it felt like we slept for just like 5 minutes." My mom goes on to tell them what happened. We go back to their place and look around for anything. There were footprints like 3 circles altogether. There were also finger smudges on the window. They swear they were not messing with them and had no idea what happened. It turns out they've had weird things happening to them too. Seeing a white glowing figure walking out by the cars, tapping on windows, things like that. So there it is. One of the things that has happened to my mom and friend that they both talked about over and over. My mom passed in 2017, and I can just hear her telling it like it was the first time.